Good evening, our merry Marvelites. Welcome to another installment, a special edition of Marvel Movie Talk, our second Quantumania reaction show. I am Christian Blatt, and with me is Eric Kanger, uh, which is pronounced like Susanner. The one, the only Count Eric Connor. Eric, thank you so much for staying up late on the West Coast, but here in
I,
LA, it's
I
actually
mean,
not that late.
it's 9 o'clock really that. I mean, I know we're both men
Yeah.
of a certain age, but I think the day that I call 9 p.m. late is the day just to start putting dirt on the body.
Yeah, but in so many instances, I'm usually passed out of sleep by now. Just especially, at the tail end of a 3-day weekend where the kids were
Yeah.
not in school today.
Oh, yeah.
But we continue our conversation now on Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp in Quantumania with the one, the only Count Eric Connor. Eric, I will open the door to you. Big picture, overall thoughts on Quantumania, sir.
Yeah, big picture is, well, it was big. I mean, Ant-Man, one thing I've always enjoyed about the Ant-Man stories from the other incarnations we've had in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is like Ant-Man always felt a little more like kind of LK, low key, right? A little more accessible, a little more like not necessarily the fate of the universe rested in his tiny little hands. And then all of a sudden, this one's like, yeah, nah, we're gonna go big and we're gonna go home. And on that end, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I'm happy. I liked it far more than the critics would make me think I was gonna like it. And I think it helps when you have that cast because we'll get into the weeds on the story, but I think that cast sort of takes you past some moments that lesser actors would make you stop and be like, "Wait, huh?" But they're so interesting, the five leads, that it's like I'm with them, wherever they take me. Uh, so overall, big picture, I was happy. This Modoc and I, feel like they definitely did justice to the Ant-Man tale and to Modoc's introduction. But there's some issues, but we'll get into that.
Well, that's a great place to start, though. If how do you feel that Modoc was handled? Because my earlier conversation with the two Jeffs was neither one of them was particularly happy, and I know in general people feel like Modoc was wronged. To me, it's kind of a silly character. I think that our pal Jordan Bloom's version for Hulu was a pretty spot on, best Modoc was ever going to be. Is kind of a silly thing, but I can understand some of the criticisms of it. But what were your thoughts on Modoc?
I think that's fair to say that was it wrong? Probably. Was Modoc maybe always? I mean, again, just reminder of what we're talking about when we talk about Modoc. Modoc's got a very strangely large head, no body, no neck, and just legs. So once you've decided to include Modoc, you kind of have to come at it with a little bit of a nudge and a wink, because
Well, by the way,
otherwise,
that description, I believe, was on February 8th, 1976. What my dad said when he used the payphone in the waiting room at Arden Hill Hospital in Goshen, New York, to let the extended family know that there was a new boy, and it was an overly large head, little dangly legs, and probably designed only for killing. By the way, before we finish that thought, also designed only for killing.
yes,
The
the most
only
dangerous Modoc of all.
I know. I love that was our good friend from the first movie. But apart from the Monog, that blew my mind. I'm so sorry, you guys. We were playing Hogwarts Legacy and got totally sidetracked, and I completely lost track of time. I apologize.
That's all right. I sent a few messages, and we were only 5 minutes away from the part where we would start bad mouthing our pal El Sassy
Cool.
Pants herself, Katie Hampton. Katie, thank you.
Yay.
Well, we're talking specifically about MODOK, and so
Yeah.
we'll pull out in a moment and go wider in terms of grand scheme. But since we're talking MODOK, what are your thoughts, Katie?
I love that. I had heard that MODOK was probably going to be in this movie. I didn't know about who was going to be playing him. I was like, oh, I wonder if they're going to get Patton Oswalt for this.
Yeah.
But like, no connection in my mind that that would be a possibility. And and then when it showed up and it was him and it was his face with Corey Stoll,
Yeah.
I could not stop laughing. I was cracking up at that. And I don't know. I Here's the thing is that with the comics, I didn't read too much of the comics. I know a lot of the properties just because of the movies and the films and the TV shows, especially because of Patton Oswalt. So I don't know a whole lot about this character, but I do know that it's like that's not the original connection to characters, is it?
No, no. I mean, it's advanced idea mechanics, whom we only really ever seen in passing on the screen. He's sort of like basically the leader. There's more to it, but I think it's all right. I don't think it's a
Okay.
character we need to have reverence for. At some point. It was before the screening, so I don't know that it was an actual spoiler. I heard that that might be Darren is his character's name is MODOK.
Yeah.
And so because I definitely had it in my head that it might be him, which I don't think I would have thought of that on my own. I didn't really remember that character and his arc
Existed.
ended by being sent into the quantum realm. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that the one criticism is that being him isn't so much the problem, is that I think a lot of people were just maybe just weirded out by the giant Corey Stoll face,
And I love that they made that stylized choice not to go photorealistic, to make his face look all sorts of effed up. And the great running joke where every time someone new saw him, they're like, "Oh my god, what the hell?"
Yeah.
And his death scene might be the most I've laughed at a movie since, I don't know, before COVID. Like him like spitting up and he's like,
Yeah.
like I lost it. Sorry for the joke. I lost my mind on that.
I
And
I was laughing so hard, but I cannot stand when any kind of like vomit or vomit assumption is on screen. Like it just drives me crazy. So when that was happening, I was like, "Oh God, this is hilarious!" But stop it, please.
It's funny because what I was going to say is it's like a microcosm of a scene that I'm going to assume Katie would not enjoy. The John Cleese is the fat man at dinner in
Yeah.
Monty Python, The Meaning of Life. It is just wafer thin and just there's like extra vomit, just a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that also like you were like a brother to me. Like what? And I died in Avenger, and
It
Scott's
was like,
just like
oh,
he's like
sure.
sure,
okay, fine.
yeah, I thought that was, it's kind of funny. Somebody who seems to, he just sees himself as way more important than he actually is. Ivan Soto does agree. His death was epically hilarious. And Daniel Drew, I will contend, you have to read him in a good story where he's used seriously and he can be a challenge. Look, that character used correctly could obviously be terrifying because he's a scary giant floating head. You definitely do some stuff with that. But I think to put him in an Ant-Man movie, yeah, I mean, look how angry he is, Eric's version of him. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't bother me. I think that the face, I don't know. Maybe they could have rendered the effect a little differently.
But I think
They
that
were
was the whole
clear.
point though, right? It's like,
I
no, let's
guess.
make it look like I don't know, the early CG work in video games
Yeah.
from the turn of the 2000s.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If this was like a Capcom MODOK,
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe they just ran out of budget. Maybe that was because I don't know if you
The whole entire set pieces were all
Yeah.
in another world in CG land. I mean, I'm sure that entire time of filming was just all green screen sets.
Yeah.
And it had to be.
And I really noticed how many different like post houses were used. Like, and that's not normally something, honestly, I pay as much attention to, but like, it was a lot. So they were
Yeah.
like farming out stuff left and right. So you almost feel like with MODOK, they're like, hey, you, cousin Luke, what do you think? You think you can handle this on your iMovie? Oh, sure thing. Thanks for the chance. And then they just gave it to cousin Luke, and lo and behold, Corey's still looking like he's in a version of Mortal Kombat.
Right. I mean, like if you were to really shrink down and micro analyze the credits, you would probably see like MODOK unit, I mean, there's probably somebody who was on that. Cami Egan in our earlier conversation voiced something that she's echoing now. I liked MODOK's introduction, but his death scene was pretty awful. I mean, I think as a serious piece of drama, yes, but to play it up for comedy might have been the best way to do it. But I understand what you're saying, Kemi Egan. She's not a fan of the arc. So Katie, since you have presented us with a tardy slip, I will allow you to circle back and let us know just sort of big picture what you thought. I know you actually texted me after you saw it, because this is one of those things. When I saw the movie last Monday, I wasn't sitting there with the knowledge that it was like not quite, but almost split down the middle as to people who liked it and didn't. And then the people who didn't like it being very vocal and deciding that the thing to do was share all the spoilers. So, but yeah, there's something in particular. I mean, I saw somebody, there were like 4 screenshots that somehow they had managed to take. And I'm like, all right,
that's just rude.
It was terrible. Yeah. But, so what were your thoughts though? I mean, I didn't think that this was going to be such a divisive film, but
I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. I honestly thought it should have been this kind of reaction, but for Multiverse of Madness personally. But like leading up to it, I was like, oh gosh, like I didn't see anything in the trailer that indicated that this was going to be like so horrible. So I was going in with like caution, knowing that there was all this like, and I saw a couple of articles that I didn't want to read because of potential spoilers, but there were some things that were like really like knocking. They're like, wow, it's like so bad, and like it's worse than the Eternals. And I was like, hold on, that's not possible. I don't think with Paul Rudd in a movie, I don't think you can be that possible. Anyway,
yeah, I mean,
hold on. What? Halloween 6.
Not even Mac and me.
No, Halloween 6. That will change your opinion about not just this movie, but life.
That's a fair point.
Fair. Okay.
But I digress. Apologies, Katie. I just had to make sure.
Yeah. Well,
even Paul Rudd is human.
I tried to gauge. I was texting with my pal Z Anderson, who's been on the show a number of times. I used to do a show with her, and the trying to gauge where it was. And the question that I ask people is, well, did you like it more than Thor: The Dark World? And she's the only one who said no. But she actually like really likes Thor: The Dark World. I'm like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. But it's usually like Eternals for a lot of people in the MCU. It's still relatively fresh in terms of remembering it. It's almost a year and a half ago now, I guess. But if people kind of remember seeing that, and then that was, I think, one. I liked it, but I understand it's a lot of characters. There's a lot happening. It's not for everybody. It's fine. Right. I'm also an admitted Marvel homer, so I definitely understand. But it's like, well, do you think it's better than Elektra? Yes. Is it better than the Affleck Daredevil? There's a scale where you try to quantify, like, where is it in relation to it? Would you rather watch Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania, or the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League, or the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, or both back to back?
Quantumania all the way. Yeah. Anything like recent DC, you could just tuck that away. I really enjoyed this. I thought that this was a fun film. I had no idea what the critics were talking about. Was it the most amazing Marvel movie we've seen? No. Was it the most terrible Marvel movie we've seen? No. But when I was texting with Christian after the show, after I watched it, I was like, No, but this feels like the same kind of Marvel that we started with, where they didn't assume that I knew all the comics back to front, but they still told me a good story that had I just dropped in to watch this movie, I would understand the goals, I would understand where they're going with. Maybe some of the bigger picture things painted it more like having known all the different knowledge of all the different movies and the shows and Loki and all of that may have like painted like more knowledge into that for me, but like it just felt like one of those movies that I could show a friend just to be like, hey, this is a fun movie. And a lot of the recent Marvel movies, I feel like we just haven't been seeing it that way.
Yeah, I was talking about this earlier. I think that there's this moment in time where Endgame happens, and it's such a big, epic, redefining of the genre almost. And then Spider-Man No Way Home is another, these really stand out. And it's like, it's really unfair to all the movies in between. It's like, well, why don't you compare this to another 3? Why don't you compare this to Iron Man 3, Thor 2, Thor 4? Thor 3 is not fair, and then it's, you just start to think about it in terms of other sequels, other follow-ups. And honestly, I liked it better than Ant-Man 2, so
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not even saying I didn't like that. I'm just saying I like this more.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Katie, one thing you were saying that about kind of like being dropped in, and if you're just dropped in, you watch this one story, can you put it together? I think one sort of bone I'd pick with this film on that end is I found like the characters early on, a lot of their decision making didn't really make much sense. I told my wife afterwards, I go, listen, honey, if I'm ever sent to the quantum realm and I spend 30 years there, I may cheat on you with Bill Murray, but she was cool with that. But also, like, I don't know, I probably would have told her at some point some of the shit I went through because I don't know, she's my wife, my partner. And the
By the way,
idea,
just to interject, my wife
yeah.
knows that I may indeed cheat on with her Bill Murray if I'm ever in a room with Bill Murray.
Oh yeah. No,
it's an understanding.
But I extend the same thing to her though. She's welcome, even like other Murrays, like Brian Doyle.
Or got the same laminated card.
It's actually this weird thing from my wife. It's Brian Doyle Murray. So
yeah,
it's close.
Wait, not Joel Murray, the star of Moving Violations?
No.
I was worried I wasn't going to be able to bring up that movie and organically, and I think I did.
No, I bet you couldn't. Yeah.
You see the hand of the puppeteer there. But in the end of it all, I think like and this has been an issue, honestly, with this most recent phase. I think a lot of the storytelling hinges on characters making decisions that are just kind of strange at best, silly in the middle, and just idiotic at worst. And for considering Marvel's strength as a comic series was always like really relatable characters, this is a trend I'm less than keen about, and I hope they course correct a bit with the next Guardians and with the Marvels, because I feel like a few movies in a row now seem to hinge on characters making really odd choices that were there just to kind of move a story along in a way that didn't feel particularly believable. And I know this is a movie featuring a big-headed monster and lots of bizarre creatures and all that, but at least the humans, you kind of need to be able to get where they're coming from, or else then it becomes weird on top of weird on top of weird without a grounding.
Well, what do you think are particularly, I don't even want to say egregious, but what are the decisions just off the top of your head? A couple that really are like, why? And I agree, by the way, we talked about this a little while ago, that at some point Janet should have at the very least told Hank. You don't have to talk to Hope about it. You definitely don't have to talk to Scott about it. I mean, he's just a guy who
he's barely in your life.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Well, and Hank too, on that end, like something so terrible happened there that she won't talk about it all. So I have an idea. I'm going to go visit, and that's the stuff where it just there's a severe lack of logic. And this gets back to stuff we brought up even with Doctor Strange in the multiverse. Like, you already have Loki, which at the end of Loki sort of kind of pulled the genie out of the bottle. And I feel like they have, and I understand they're trying to keep the films and TV sort of separate, although the teaser might make you think otherwise. I'm sorry, the end credit scene might make you think otherwise, but feels like that's a pretty solid explanation for a lot of weird shit going on, is the end of Loki. And yet, instead, we have 2 movies in a row now hinged on characters making really stupid choices that cause all these problems and a fair amount of death. So that's something I just feels unnecessary. Yeah.
And I do think that it relied less on the plot of Loki than Multiverse of Madness did on WandaVision, because you really had to know where it came from in order to realize that the story kind of repeated itself and she learned a different lesson in a way. Whereas with this, it's still like you didn't need to know about what Loki was doing. Like you didn't have to have a Disney Plus subscription in order to go see this movie as a prerequisite, which was one of those things that, like, with Multiverse of Madness, it just drove me crazy that was like pre-required reading. But with this, it felt like we get those teasers like that, like having known those TV shows and having seen those movies and all that stuff and having that background knowledge was cool, and it painted the picture for me in a wider scope. But this movie itself just kind of relied on the story that we were telling in the moment and what was happening in this timeline, in this universe. And that felt like original Marvel to me, where I didn't have to know what was happening when we see Thor's hammer, at some point, and having not known who Thor was before seeing that movie. But yeah.
I want to bring in a few comments from the chat. Larry points out, and Eric, you'll note his avatar there with the Philly fanatic. Larry says, "I like Quantumania. It had strong Porky and Wacky Land energy, and that is
Totally.
not a title for what it sounds like.
No.
That's not a spin-off of the Porky's.
I think I saw that movie on
comedies.
I saw that on 8th Avenue many years ago, back in the early 90s.
No, that was wacky.
Work.
No, that was Wacky in Porkland. That's a totally different movie. Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
But
Wanky in Porkland? Okay.
But I mean, it's sort of that wacky, wacky universe. The in that genre, I guess, the like Duck Amuck things. You can think about that. Larry also adds, it fell apart a bit at the end, but I don't know why the critics are saying it's so bad, because that's what the critics do. I mean, that's what their whole thing is to talk about how smart they are, about how terrible everything is. And remember, this is a genre that they hated for a very long time and never really stopped. Yeah, they're just getting back to it. They're like, oh, good. I'm glad that the fact that I enjoyed, Endgame hasn't ruined me. I mean, it's and look, these movies. I don't know. It's a lot like reading comic books. It's it's not everything is. I'm trying to think of a good. Not everything is God loves, man kills. All right, not everything is Craven's Last Hunt, the 6-part Spider-Man story. Not everything is like epic, and not everything's The Dark Knight. Sometimes it's just a story about the dude who talks to ants, who we all like. So I don't know. I think that I don't know. I mean, I think that people who feel a little bit let down by it because probably they wanted more, okay, that's fine. There are some people that I follow. It kind of surprised me that you don't have to love it, but people who didn't like it, I'm like, oh, this seemed like somebody I thought would like it. But I think it's
it was
fine.
nice to not be completely emotionally ripped apart like an episode of This Is Us, but movie length. It was nice that not everything was torn from our souls that we liked.
No, and look how much crying there is in the trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3,
which is I think that one's going to be prepared for. Yeah, so like I need rough. A light breather before we go into that. Like,
let's have a classic Ant-Man adventure.
Right.
So I don't know.
I was shocked. I mean, of how light it ended up being. I don't know how far into details we are giving, but
Well, we're going to talk. We're at this point, this specific chunk of the conversation. We're more than 20 minutes in. We are definitely talking all the spoilers, so there's nothing to hold back on. If you're watching this, the assumption is that you've seen the movie, or you don't care if you have anything spoiled. And it's really just plot points. I mean, in terms of what we're used to of like, whoa, major spoilers, I mean, Multiverse of Madness had those. This is really like the end credit scene. The very end credit scene is the one thing where you're like, whoa, that's really kind of it. But so what was the point you wanted to make though, Katie?
I was surprised that no one died. Honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Kang the Conqueror, like true blue, purple Kang the Conqueror, coming down and just talking about all that he has done, and and like seeing the depth of it. Like, not one. The part that did make me cry, and it was mostly just because it was symbolic, I feel like, was towards the end when I was sure Scott was alone. They had all gone through the portal. He had knocked him out of the way so Kang couldn't get through. And I was like, Scott's not going to win this fight. Like, he can't. And I was like, awesome. And then Hope comes back. And just saying that sentence out loud still gets me misty, but like literal. And Hope was kind of like the superhero of this movie with the smallest arc, because she saved him in almost every single circumstance. She was a little bit Deus Ex Machina or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
But that, like, her coming back through the portal to like help him against fucking Kang, really got me emotional. And that was the one part that I did cry, because I was like, oh my god, and then he survived. Wow.
And their moment together right after that too was really. I mean, it was like, it actually had some legit emotion, and the "I love yous." Like, it really. I was kind of glad they let that moment breathe, because it seemed like they were going to be stuck there. Then, of course, it's like, nope. Bloop, bloop, bloop,
well, back. I was talking earlier, and I kind of talked myself out of it. I was a little disappointed that they didn't make the decision to leave them there, and obviously they weren't going to be left there forever. Next time they needed them in a movie, they'd figure it out. But then I did realize, well, the second one ended with him getting trapped in the quantum realm, because everybody got dusted. So then I was like, oh, maybe they can't do that and everyone. But
that's what I was
you
thinking,
really felt like they were building to that. You know what I mean? And Kemi Egan thought that Kang was going to kill Janet and maybe Hope as well. I think that if Kang were in the employ of Disney directly, Kang would have made sure to kill everyone who made more than a certain dollar amount in future films. And Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer would probably be at the top of it. I just remember when they're at Tony's funeral in Endgame, I'm like, this is the most expensive cameo you've ever seen.
That was composite at best.
Yeah, right.
They claimed it wasn't, but especially if you watch it again, a couple of them are flat. They almost look like shrinky dinks.
Well, and that was the thing, is that Tom Holland even had said that, like, they didn't tell him anything about the scene. They just said to be well dressed and looking sad. And he was like, okay, no idea that this was Tony's death. And I was like, so you had to composite that. Like, if he didn't know and everybody else was there, come on.
Everyone else knew, but they were like, Tom's going to spoil this for everyone.
Well, that is true, because he probably would.
It's like I never tell my kids any secrets. Like I surprised my wife for her birthday. I don't trust them. I trust the dog, but I trust them to keep it.
Let's see, what is it? So 14 years. Actually, it's 15 years removed from getting engaged to my now wife, and I had to not do the thing where I talked to their parents beforehand, because I knew her mom was going to be just weird and she wouldn't have been able to be quiet about it. But then
Fair.
My now brother-in-law showed me up because he did ask for my wife's sister. He asked the parents ahead of time, and I'm like, all right, you're just here to make me look bad. I get it.
Yep.
But I was just like, no, I can't. I just to the extent that I knew her mom at that point, I'm like, she's not going to tell her, but she's going to it's going to be in her head, and her head's going to explode. So I think back on that sometimes, and I still feel like I made the right decision. Daniel Drew, as always, with a great question. Do we think that the reshuffling of Phase 4's order because of the pandemic really made some of these stories and plot weirdness changes happen? Like, are we still recovering MCU plot wise? I don't think we are at this point.
I feel like the final edits happened around 2020 just for the scripts.
Right.
Like that blue copy may have come in right when they were filming or something, because
Yeah.
there's some dark theme. There's been a lot of dark themes in the MCU, and it makes sense. But it's been overwhelming, and this is why I really loved this movie. That I was like, oh, okay, I can breathe a little.
But just
And
a little.
I agree. I don't think these last couple of movies would have been as affected by the reshuffling that hit the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, or really, I mean, the one that got hit so much with it was WandaVision, where I mean there was such huge. I mean, we talked about it here. There's such huge changes to that, and I mean, literally character Kat Dennings disappears, from that show,
Right.
and so that one seemed to really. I feel like that's the year that really everything took the brunt of it. But I agree, Katie. At this point,
but it's
don't
an
know if it
interesting
would've
thing to think
reshuffled
about.
it.
But I think we're far enough removed that that I don't think we have to worry about it. Let's spend a moment talking about Cassie Lang in this film, and we talked a little bit earlier about the decision to recast the actress who had played her in Endgame, because clearly this is a character that we're going to see again. She's got a suit for a reason. I assume we're going to probably see a lot more of her, and maybe some less of Paul Rudd, and definitely everybody else. So I think that they have plans for her. But let me ask you first, Katie. What did you think of this iteration of Cassie, the one who understands the tap punch method eventually?
Right. Eventually. Yeah, I was bummed for the actress that originally played the daughter. That would have been really great and cool. I even heard a rumor that she was going to be back in some capacity, and I was thinking some sort of variant version of Scott was going to be this, but
Oh,
I don't know.
interesting. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of overthinking ideas, um but this version of Cassie, I thought she was fantastic. I thought she was a really great actress. I'm excited for her future in the MCU, and especially if she gets into any team ups or anything like that. Some of the more recent young recruits, or young Marvels, if you will, I feel like are really cool, and I'm really enjoying seeing what might come out of them in the future. And she definitely sold it for me in this movie. I thought her sass was great. I loved her opening scene. I don't know. Diane liberal over here. So
Ivan Soda loved her in the movie and was caught off guard that she calls Hank grandpa. I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, essentially, it's not literally, but I think that it's I don't know. I think that they give her a couple of good moments of really sticking it to her dad and laying in, but in general she's not. I don't know. We've seen characters sort of like that, and
Sure.
I think that she loves her dad, and she also feels like she's just disappointed that he's not doing more, and by that I don't mean doing a bigger book tour, but instead that he's not Ant-Manning so much. He's not doing so much avenging, so she's decided to do some avenging of her own. And I think that it will be interesting to see more of her, whether it's with Kamala or Kate Bishop or Yelena or whoever it might be. What are your specific thoughts, Eric, about Cassie in this movie?
Well, I mean, I feel like you just ran down a list of what would be a really terrific Young Avengers that's really female led.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, and it wouldn't feel like I don't know, that moment in Endgame that some people bumped up against. So it's like, here's all the actresses. Look, they're all in one shot.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it feels like organically they've set up now a half dozen really interesting 20-something and younger female characters that I think
Sure, yeah.
would make a terrific team. So
Mhm.
I do hope, and again, we'll see where they land with this all in Civil War and Kang Dynasty. I'm sorry, and Secret Wars and Kang
Secret Wars,
Dynasty. Yeah, but I think, yeah, she was great. And I think I realized she was in Freaky, which if you haven't seen that,
I
it's
have not seen that.
that's
No,
a really fun. That's the one. It's like a horror film, but Freaky Friday, where the killer and
Oh, it's
Oh my
Vince
God,
Vaughn, right?
yes, yeah.
yeah,
I actually,
yeah,
I remember now that I wanted to see that. So, and her name's Catherine Newton, by the way.
yeah. She was
let's
great in that,
let's
and
give her credit. Yeah.
I think to their credit too, she hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Like right when like you were saying, Katie, when we first met her, like you're already like, oh, she's interesting, and I do feel bad for that previous actress who, in her brief time on screen, seemed quite good, but I
Yeah.
like that there was a nice echo here of what they did in Endgame. That Tony was sort of like, okay, I sort of got my happily ever after, like I kind of don't want to rock the boat, and then realizing, of course, well, there's a lot of people who won't get their happily ever afters if you don't act, if you don't do something. So I think that was a nice echo of that plot line. And yeah, the stuff with the book, by the way, they got so much comedic mileage out of that.
And
Even
I'll
the
point out,
callback at the end with the quote.
again, by the way, that the book is available for pre-order. You will be able to get the book in September by Scott Lang.
I'm so
And-
curious to know who actually wrote it. Like
That's a
which
great
one of the
question.
writers?
AI.
Yeah.
It was written by AI.
AI. ChatGPT wrote it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Hank in this movie. And I was a little bit critical in that I felt like they could have done more with him. And the weirdest interaction I had about anybody from this movie was someone who asked, oh, so you're saying that you liked the socialist propaganda ? And I'm like, wait, you mean the one joke about how ants society is like a society is like socialism? I'm like, yeah, I didn't really lose any sleep over that. It was a joke. It's all right. And everybody's even like, oh, not again, Hank. I mean, it's actually like kind of a funny moment.
Yeah.
I don't think that Marvel Studios is saying we should all live like ants. But we could learn a lot from the little guy. What did you think, Eric, about Gordon Gekko in this movie?
Listen, ants are good. Ants work. Ants cut right through it and catches the essence of the evolutionary spirit. And in all its form, the worker ant, the queen ant, or I don't know if they're queen ants. Anywho,
no,
I
mean, there have to be, don't there? Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so, or at least kings.
Do we have to talk? Wait. Do we have to sidebar about where babies come from? There has to be queen ant.
Ant babies specifically.
Ant
Yeah, ant babies. Yeah.
And how does Adam Ant fit into any of this is also an important question for another time, another podcast.
Another time.
Yeah, I listen. You have Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer, and you could always use more of them. I mean, that's a thing. That's like a default setting. They're both two of the great actors of their generation. Anytime you see them on screen, they're going to make the scene better. That's just what they do. And that moment of him showing up at the end, walking like a boss with all the ants, was maybe the best shot of the whole film for me, except for the vomiting, MODOK. Which I now like more, knowing it almost made Katie sick as well. But yeah, I think, the logic stuff aside, I think, he wasn't given that much, but everything he was given, he nails. That great line, and I know it was in the trailer, like, I dated some women, but none of them were you. Like,
yeah,
that was a genuinely, cheesy, sure, but
But that's a movie.
made me believe it. right?
That like made me like grab the popcorn. I was just like, yes. And
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I have to also say that like this was an important movie for me because this is the first movie I've seen in literal like half a year because of like my knee and everything and all the ACL repair. This is the first time back in the movie theater and like trusting
Oh
myself
yeah,
to
Eric,
sit.
you probably didn't know that
no,
Katie's halfway to becoming MODOK. Actually, the
Sure.
reconstruction that she's
she's
going
more
under. Yeah,
machine
Mhm.
than woman.
Then
yeah.
Twisted evil she has become.
I'm actually
But we can,
more cadaver than.
but we
Oh,
can rebuild her. Yes.
Oh, and has been rebuilt, but like it was like the first time that I was like sitting and like comfortable and like in a movie theater, but and like it I just had that like little kid feeling with like a story where the good guys kind of win in the end, like it was just such a kid moment for me with how great and light this movie. And sorry, I know we're talking about Hank, but Michelle Pfeiffer can still get it. Are we kidding?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I am going to repeat myself and make the point that I made earlier, which was seeing this movie. Basically there's the teaser at the beginning, before the movie starts, the cold open, if you will, and then there's her flashback. And then also, again, light spoiler for season 3 of Star Trek Picard, there's this sequence at the beginning of the season premiere where Gates McFadden has like a laser rifle and she's like kicking some ass. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So just in case anybody forgot, the ladies of a certain age can still kick a lot of ass in space. And I'm like, this is great. Let's see more of that because also, no disrespect to Gates McFadden, but she's Michelle fucking Pfeiffer. So thank God that they realize what they have with
yeah,
her.
yeah.
And yeah, I definitely agree. I thought that it was great that they used her the way that they did, and with Hank, I felt like they could have done a lot more with him,
Oh,
but with her,
Christian, you're becoming MODOK.
You are becoming one of the
Your
something
your
was taking
your
over the feed.
your auto's
let me
the
know.
equivalent of Darren's face.
Let me know when I'm back. If I'm back
You're
now, that would be great.
You're out of sync though, which is kind of fun. So
oh.
say something. Oh,
Interesting.
now he's mad.
Oh no, there is a little bit of a delay.
I like that.
But yeah,
Well, you
Michelle
guys can
Pfeiffer
talk
is
about her.
incredible.
I'm trying to do that pose.
Oh no. Oh yeah, let's all do our best.
I'm smoldering.
Pfeiffer. Oh, I feel like I need to still like lose like all of the weight in my face before I can be as jutty as why did I pulled in to make my jaw more jutty?
I think we
Perfect.
nailed it. Yeah,
I think
Katie, you were saying.
good. What I was saying is that Michelle Pfeiffer can still get it, and I don't know
Yep.
how she even got there to begin with. Hey, Christian, welcome back.
That's all right. But I think that it was great to see. I think that they really utilized the fact that they had her kind of for the first time. I mean, she really hasn't done a lot in any of these movies. I mean, you've seen her before, but this time I feel like they really got a lot out of the fact that she's Janet Van Dyne, she's the Wasp, she's in Avengers #1 from 1962. So yeah, I was very happy with her. And look, I just wanted a little bit more out of Hank, but
Sure.
he does have a very important role, so at least there's that. But I think that basically the overwhelming feedback that everybody has on this movie, regardless of what they thought about it, I think
It's happening
everyone's
again.
really talking about Kang.
For those who missed it, he said, what we're talking about is Kang. I have no idea what he said.
But yeah, I mean, Jonathan Majors was incredible in this movie. I mean, if you hadn't seen him before, you have to see him in everything he does, whether it be the Lovecraft Country, Country, or in the end of Loki. Spoilers again, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, he's
But-
in the Five Bloods, the Spike Lee movie. Yeah, this guy like went from
He's
grad
so
school,
good.
and it's like a baseball player basically skipping the minor leagues and going
Uh,
right to the majors.
oh yeah.
Last Black Man in San Francisco. I mean, this guy, I mean, what's incredible, by the way, Katie, it's like he's got this, and then he has Creed. He has this indie
Yeah.
movie where he plays a bodybuilder, uh,
Yeah.
and
I
so
mean,
he's popping everywhere.
we just need a couple more. Like, I'm excited for Creed 3 just because he's finally got that shirt off, but apart from that, like,
I noticed.
he's one of the most he's one of the most interesting actors out there, and I'm like, as soon as I saw him on screen, I was like, I don't think we're going to see the last of Oscars for Marvel films, because I really do think that this
Mhm.
performance should be nominated at very least for the next year of the Oscars, because he played it so sweetly, and like, because we have the last time we saw him in Loki, and he was that he who
Oh, he was,
remains,
yeah, and he was
you
like
know.
off his rocker. I mean, he
Well,
was
and
like total,
he was like a character in a Shakespeare play. Like, he was
yeah,
just so exuberant and crazy. And then to see him as, like, the more serious, toned down, like, very controlled character, who also seemed glassy-eyed for like the first couple of times that he was talking to people, like the kind of emperor that you listen to, you lean in
yeah.
close and listen to, which is why I think, like, that is more terrifying than anything other than a tyrant. Tyrant is scary, but then when you have a controlled, very calculated, like, very soft spoken, like, emperor, that's fucking
Yeah.
terrifying.
Well, and one of the best scenes I thought for him was actually the quietest scene. It was him early on with Michelle Pfeiffer when they're both stuck, and they're like, who knows, is it years that they've been together, and it was like both of them underplaying it. He's not, and I think it was so smart. He's not playing the end of the script.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes actors who play villains kind of forget about that. It's like character
They
has got to get
see where
there.
they go. Yeah, and
And so he was really like a very soulful there, and very like kind of a lost, a lost creature who found a connection.
enough to make me even think, like, I truly believe, like, maybe he's a variant and another king comes to conquer
Yeah,
over
yeah, yeah.
him. Like, I had a slight thought of that, like, maybe this isn't like King the Conqueror, this is just a different version of King. But
Yeah.
no, that was the
Well,
Conqueror, and that was
but
great.
see, my thinking was that he who remains also kind of makes the same point. He's like, no, 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 I'm the good one. You shouldn't stop me.
Right,
And
right,
so
right.
then he kind of does this. And I'm like, my takeaway is that they're all the bad one. They're just
Oh yeah.
bad in different ways. So
Oh yeah.
I don't think that, we would have been any better off with him trying to stop everybody else. They're
But
all
they,
motivated by the same. They want to be the one who remains. They want to be the last king standing,
right.
which sounds like a great movie, actually. Last king
And they
standing.
found an actor who can play so many different characters too. I
Yes.
mean, I think even that brief glimpse of him in the other variants, I think
Yeah, as a
already
Mortis
shows.
and Ramatot.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, and the
and
voice
that voice he
variations.
did. Yeah,
Like,
he's
yeah,
well. You
that
need
was the voice that I thought Voldemort was gonna sound like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, no,
and that
Daniel's totally right. We're gonna get a lot of him, and not just one character.
And what a smart decision to make, to hire Jonathan Majors for all those variations,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's got so much left in him, and it's just, I'm so excited to see what we're going to see out of him in the next couple of performances.
And if I can put a little rain on our parade of love, the one thing is, I wish it gave us a little bit more, like almost like we catch up to the context of why he wants to do all these things. But since we haven't seen him with the other variants, it was a little hard to feel complete, to really connect with his thirst for revenge. That was even though I understood in theory he was stranded and left to die, kind of like a Khan from Star Trek 2. I still think that his logic for causing so much destruction not fully clicking for me just yet as an audience member. I do hope in the future ones we get more of a sense of, kind of on a very sort of basic level, like why he feels so wronged, like why they felt like this guy, all of them seemed a little nutty, what was it about him that made him so much more dangerous than any other member of the Council of I want to call it the Council of Ricks, but the Council of Kangs, right? Because I
Yes.
think we kind of need that. I think that's a thing that I'm sure we'll get more of soon.
Sure. I think, like, going back to Christian's point, I think, like, because they all end up being bad, it's just what version of bad are you? And that is fascinating to see. Like, that, I mean, that's true multiversal logic in a way. So
Yeah, and just a few comments in the chat. Daniel Drew again pointing out Immortus and the one other future Kang are the only good-ish or neutral Kangs. Immortus is essentially a neutral Kang, and something to think about. Daniel points out in the comics, Immortus has been a future version of Kang who doesn't want to conquer anymore. Even a conqueror wants to hang it up and go move out in the country. And all things dope new here. I liked this movie. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Critics are killing it. Critics, there are critics. I haven't seen a lot of critical acclaim for it, but I think that the fan reaction has been, a little bit. It's mostly down the middle, but I think it's weighed a little bit towards people who at least mostly liked it. But I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about what we got out of Scott in this movie. This is the Ant-Man movie, and we haven't talked nearly enough about Ant-Man. What are some of your thoughts for what we got to see out of the titular? Well, one of the two titular characters, Katie, about Scott Lang.
Again, I do really love his arc in this. You got me on. You're just gonna get a love fest for this movie, but yeah, I thought Paul Rudd was fantastic in his delivery. I love the opening. I forget the song, but it was so perfectly Welcome Back.
It's the theme from Cotter.
Welcome Back, Cotter.
And it's not the first time that Scott has had some sort of like sitcom as like a song that he's walking to or he's like jamming out to. I think he had a Partridge Family song at some point as well. I can't remember fully, but loved how he went from the guy who's getting all the attention for all of his good deeds and working with the Avengers and like kind of getting his laurels from that. And like that's just the world he's in now. He's just that sort of washed up actor in a way that's just kind of going to conventions and things like that and just making his money off of those things. But then Cassie comes in and is like, there's other people to save. Like, you did that once. What are you doing with your life now? And I love that she poses that question for him right before. And this movie clips pretty quickly along, especially in the beginning. Like, they get into the quantum realm pretty fast. So yeah, I loved where Scott ends up in the end, where he basically does find, like, his mission is always to save Cassie, always protect Cassie, but he also finally has some kind of drive to protect others, which I think is a really cool thing.
Yeah, let me run through some of these. Again, all things dope. I liked the father-daughter aspect of this movie. Some of my favorite, especially after all the time we missed due to the blip, having the extra birthday. Ivan Soto, Cassie, and Scott together was my favorite part. But Kame Egan was waiting for Barbarino to stop him on the street. If they had figured out a way to bring in John Travolta as Jigsaw from the Punisher movie during that song, it would, I mean,
heads would have exploded.
Yeah, the MODOK heads would have definitely exploded at some point or another. And Eric, I want to make sure to give you a chance to sing the praises of Scott Lang as well.
Yeah, I think it's like Paul Rudd brings such a different energy than like Robert Downey, and yet completely owns this role. Owned it really from the trailer. The first time we saw him in a trailer for Ant-Man 1, already we could see like it was a perfect marriage of casting and character and performer, and I know he had a hand in writing some of the first couple movies too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he the first one I think he got a writing credit. I don't recall in the second one if he did.
Oh, okay.
And he really is just like the most likable performer, and his yet at the same time he's not. I feel like sometimes like a performer who's likable, that term can limit them as an actor in some ways. They can sort of coast on charm. I feel like he's never phoning it in. I feel like he's always like present in the
Committed.
moment. Yeah, like and he's good with sharing the screen. Like with the actress Catherine Newton who played his daughter, with Evangeline Lilly. I mean, I think he's always in the moment and his reactions to things like they don't have to overwrite it because he can sell almost any line, right? Even the jokes about the books and then that moment, of course, you read my book. Like that was just such a moment. He made such a meal out of that one little line. But he's just I do hope we get more of him. I don't know what the future of Ant-Man's gonna look like, but what like the energy he brought to Civil War and to the Infinity War and I'm sorry, to Endgame. I mean, he does something very different than the rest of the MCU. And I always had a soft spot for Ant-Man. And then when I found out he was playing him, I was like, okay, thank you. And he's managed to not make it feel old. I don't feel like he's,
No.
I feel like there's still, I'm hungry for more of him, though I do think, there is room for other actors still to kind of get a little more in the mix. But yeah, I don't think this will be the last time he suits up.
No, I mean, I
I hope
think
not.
him not being, killed off or having to retire in some way or being left in the quantum realm means we'll see him again. I just think that they'll use him sparingly. And I think the next time that there's a call for Pym particles, it'll be Cassie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I get to something that Eric sent to me. We were talking about MODOK and his large head. So Eric wanted to make sure that we had this photo that we're a little zoomed in on. But what
That
are
is
your
not that bad.
thoughts? It's funny though, because there's, Katie referenced, you referenced the Partridge Family, and this reminds me of Adam Rich from Eight is Enough. The haircut, really, the haircut
More than
alone.
once I've gotten that comparison.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good bowl cut there.
I only wish you were doing right now what he's doing right now. But anyway, what?
Isn't he dead?
Yeah, that's why I said it.
Oh wow, that's a new one. Christian usually doesn't actual wish death on me.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's,
well, it was fun though. It felt like a good moment. I've known you long enough now, where I feel like I
You
can
can wish death upon me. It's like, oh, Christian, oh, you and
oh, who would I do these shows with? But
how
so,
sweet.
kind of, right?
Notice the head. If could you put the photo back just for one moment? Because this was pointed out to me. This picture used to be
a lot of directing going on here.
Oh, I know. I'm wielding my power in that you wish death upon me. So this was up at our Jewish Community Center for years, and every time we'd walk by it, at least one of my friends would go. They would quote, "Was it so I married an axe murderer?" Head move, like the head. Notice how my head to my shoulder blades here, as a 48-year-old man. Notice how my head is almost the same width as my shoulders. Like it takes up a lot of space.
You've got a little bit of like the shoulders move, like your head looks different because of the perspective of your shoulders. Like it doesn't.
I thought that, but we didn't show the other children in this because why should they suffer?
Yeah, exactly.
But
you didn't get releases.
Yeah, if you see the rest of them, the perspective makes you realize no, it's not their perspective. I was born with a head this size, and I've just grown into it over 40 some odd years, which explains my, how my mom viewed me, because that had to come out of her. But no, that was I was known as having a very large head. It was known as the Connor head in my family as well. Like apparently it passed on from generation to generation. And I'm happy to report my children's heads seem right. They don't seem
they do seem
large.
Yeah, they seem normal.
Right.
How much of this was a concern that you like told your wife that like, hey, just so you know,
now I'm about to put my seed in you. Let me warn you about where this might lead.
You're
That was my
gonna
pillow
you're gonna
talk.
you're gonna need a C-section. Let's just leave it at that. We talked a little bit about Hope, and I feel like
Yeah.
Katie, you felt like you got a decent amount of some good moments from her.
Good moments, but
I,
not good arc. I wouldn't say
right,
like a
that's what
good
I was
arc.
gonna get at. I'm gonna say one of the worst haircuts in the MCU, possibly
Oh,
ever.
what?
Look, a short hair on a woman can be fine. Going from long hair to short hair, it not necessarily an issue. I
I
just
gotta
feel
ask, this is like a thing because I know that this is a thing for my fiance as well. But like when Brie Larson went from like the sort of like short, wavy, whatever
yeah.
to the shorter cut, did you also get upset then too?
A little bit, but this one, I mean, she's
What is
very
this?
specifically. Well, here's the thing, though, is that Evangeline Lilly specifically got a Vulcan haircut to
Okay.
invoke
All right.
Star
Well,
Trek again. So it's not that it's short; it's that it's a bad short haircut.
what makes
So
it bad? Like I think it frames her face really well. Like it reminds me a little bit of Ripley, in Aliens.
well, it
Um,
reminds me of Ripley's Believe It or Not. Believe it
oh
or not, that's
wow.
actually hair on
It
her head.
reminds me of Ripley in Alien 3. She had a shaved head in that one, for
Because
those
she's
that
got a
don't know.
shaved head in that
Gotcha.
one.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I, I didn't bump up on the hair as much. I think I bumped
Yeah.
up on
Well, you could
the fact that she
focus
sort of
on something more
disappeared.
substantial like the storytelling. That's all right.
Nah, don't gotta
But
do that.
this is a thing, and like I've noticed this, like people like, and I forgive me, but I'm gonna point it out. But like white men especially get so fucking pissed when women cut their hair super short. And I wonder if there's some kind of connection between like usually women cut their hair after a breakup, so it feels a little bit like a personal like moment, like she broke up with me and like now her hair's short or something. It feels like there's that connection when women do this in Marvel movies. Am I wrong?
Well, it's. I can only think of Brie Larson. I don't know of anybody else. I mean, there's
No, but I
characters
think no. Well,
like
outside of MCU, I'm thinking of, remember Felicity when she cut her hair, and
yes.
people lost their minds over that. So no, I see where you're coming from, Kate. It definitely
Yeah.
this seems to trigger
Oh,
a fair amount of men.
forgive me.
No, but Katie, on that end, has your hair been short like any time
Have
in the
you ever
past few
had
years?
had a short
Oh
haircut
yeah,
like
no,
that?
I
Okay.
loved it. I even dyed it blue at one point. This is actually the longest it's been, I think, in my entire life. This it drives me crazy, but we're growing it out for the wedding. But yeah, no, I have had it short and I've loved it. You do have to have a certain body type when you go super short, and I am not in that body type right now. So,
All right. I've decided I'm growing the hair back out. I don't know what's going to look like now. I'm going to
I
try and
think
redo my
going full
college
shag.
look. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh no,
I
the
think
bowl cut from when I was
Oh
5.
yes.
It's going to be a very broken bowl, unfortunately, up top. But the size
Yeah,
will
just
be
do it yourself. Yeah, that'll make it look real good. Lots of layers.
important question. I'm sorry, Katie. When's your wedding?
April.
Oh, Mazel Tov. And
Thank you
I
very
think you
much.
should cut your hair short right before the
Right out.
wedding. Wear the veil.
I
Really
mean
test your partner.
that that
I'm just putting that out there.
yeah.
I'm telling you, I can't do a veil because it reminds me too much of like child brides for some reason. Like
Oh,
it's
I
so
honestly I thought you were going to say Child's Play, Bride of Chucky. I actually
sure.
thought that's where you were going.
I mean, yeah, that too. It's part of it. It's a child and a bride.
You're like, I
A
can't
doll.
ever again.
I don't
Yeah.
want to be that creepy.
Well, let's see if there's any final thoughts we want to make sure we get to here. I think that I already shouted this out, but there are some fun little treats in this movie. We knew that Bill Murray was going to be in it, but I sure didn't know that Chidi from The Good Place was going to be in this movie, and
That was
he
great.
was
And
he was the
great.
perfect character for him.
Who was the goo guy? What was his name?
I have
I have hole. I have
Yeah.
holes.
Yeah, that guy was great. I like that character.
We had to look him up because I was like, who did that voice? I was like, was that Michael Cera or something? But no, it's a voice actor, and I think he's done
Yeah.
a lot of different characters. but knocked it out of the park. I can't remember the name of the actual character, but loved that character. It feels like the next Pixar film, honestly.
Yeah, it's called Drink Me.
Yeah.
But in general, look, I would have been happy to have a conversation with anybody who just outright hated the movie. Just the collection of people that I've assembled don't seem to be those ones. And I'm always fine if people can explain why they don't like something. They don't have to defend why they don't like something. Just tell me what it is about it that you don't like. And people don't necessarily have to try to to try to change anybody's mind, anything like that. But I was happy with this movie, and it seems like you both reasonably were. Although, Eric, you're starting to wonder if they should hit the panic button over there at Marvel Studios because of the poor decision making by some of our characters.
It's not panic button yet. I'm not that dramatic about it, but
Yeah,
no, I just I'm curious in the storytelling, especially as we get into Stranger Tides. Like, just kind of making sure like you don't kind of lose, the characters for the forest. So that's my concern. But that being said, I mean, I agree with everything we're saying here overall. Like, these are, Marvel still manages almost 3 dozen movies into this universe to still find new angles and new approaches to the storytelling in ways that's pretty damn exciting. Even the way they're able to utilize their heroes to find that we've had Giant Man, but then we had like Mega Giant Man,
yeah.
which I thought was a nice little treat there. And by the way, I realized something I found from a very early Comic-Con was an old school Giant Man
Oh yeah, that is the
that I
old
got.
school design. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
and
so much so that he looks like Budman, which is the precursor to Duff Man. As always, Daniel Drew, the man with the answers. Veb is that
Beb.
character's name, voiced by David, oh boy, Desmalkian. And I think the Yups is just that somebody knew that he was the Baby Yaga dude from X-Cons. So giving shout outs, I thought that was a fun character. How many holes do you have? That sort of a thing. I thought that was great. Look, I think that they made the quantum realm fun, even though I guess it's largely horrifying for the people who live there. But for us to visit for for like an hour and 45 minutes, it was fun. And I'm looking for fun out of my Marvel movies. And I think even though Guardians 3 looks like it'll be very dramatic, it's a Guardians movie. It's going to be fun. We can tell from the trailer it's going to be fun. So I'm ready. That's just to entertain me. That's what I really want, and that's what they continue to do. And it is okay if a produce meter ranks it a low number. That's okay. I don't really care. Let's not make decisions based on what the Veggie Tales tell us we should go and do. Oh my God, the tomato doesn't like it. Yeah, but the
Cucumber.
rutabaga did think that it was fair. So, but anyway, so I appreciate both of you joining me for this portion of our conversation. Katie, if people want to find you, continue the conversation, where do they go to do that?
Well, you can find me at El Sassy Pants. It's right there, but a little covered. But that's okay. No, that's your logo. Oh yeah, nailed it. There you go. El Sassy Pants. ELSASSYPANTS. I'm on that for Twitter, Instagram, all of the things mostly, unless you're on TikTok, and then that's Pants with a Z.
Pants with a Z.
Yeah, there's a whole story behind that, but yeah.
Eric, where can people find you?
Well, on TikTok, I go by El Sassy Pants with an S.
There it is.
That explains a lot, actually. Yes.
And everywhere else, which is really just 2 other places, Instagram and Twitter, Count Eric Connor. And if you're feeling bold, you could find me on Facebook. My middle name is Adam. Don't be too shocked by that news. Yeah, it's fun, and I'm happy to hear that people enjoyed this. I know my sons thought it was the greatest, so it's good to see we still have our childlike innocence and wonder well alive in all 3 of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when your kids start saying like, "Oh, I really felt like this story structure was lacking in Act 3,"
Yeah, man, they're like,
and I feel like the plot armor just wasn't there, which is a term that I just recently heard Rob Liefeld misuse for an hour and 15 minutes on his
oh,
podcast, but he's always very entertaining and very passionate. So,
Love that guy.
yeah, that's all right. But yes, and if you want to see more of Eric and I on Monday, the 27th, we'll be doing the Geekscape Book Club. And for Black History Month, we'll be talking about Bitter Root. And please find us over there. But of course, you can find us regularly on Marvel Movie Talk. And there will be so there have been 2 episodes of Marvel Movie Talk on one day, so that's going to be enough for this week. We'll have one more Ant-Man conversation that will be posted next Thursday in the usual slot of 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. But Eric, it's going to be a little lean with all of the Marvel movies scaling back and the movies shifting and the series scaling back. So I think we're going to finally have to get to our Elektra episode, our Ang Lee Hulk episode, our Roger Corman's Fantastic Four episode, which is probably the best of the 3 movies that I just listed.
sure. Old school Captain America.
Oh my gosh! Well,
Oh yeah,
our pal Michael Shirley like legitimately loves the Matt Salinger 1990 Captain America. So we'll find fun stuff to bring to everybody. But but next week you'll get some more Ant-Man. But thank you, Katie. Thank you, Eric. And thank you, everybody in the chat, especially those who stayed up late. We'll see you next time. But as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior!